Um, hey, hi everyone. Hi Sonal. Hi Hari. Hi Akhil. Hi Kiran. Hi Adil. Hi Fatima. Hi Manikandan. Hi Sirisha. Dolly. Sandrine. Siva. Okay, so good to see you all. Um okay, so we'll just wait few minutes for everyone to join. Hi Marcos. Hem. Mohammed. Bavesh. Harish. Rahul. Hi, good morning. Hi Pallavi. Okay, so we have 46 people here. So we'll just wait for a few minutes, okay? Thanks, Bhavish. Okay, so before we start, right, just a quick question. So I had given some assignments, right, in the last class. I think the last two sessions I had given some assignments. The previous, I think in the session five, the assignment that I was given was, I think, pretty, it was like extremely basic queries, I think. And in the last session also, it was basic SQL queries only, but at least you had to there was something that you could do with that, right? So some filtering and some joins and etc. So I just want to ask, has everyone tried to solve all of those assignment queries? I think in total I gave you around 24 SQL queries in the last two sessions. Has everyone tried to do it? Is there any SQL problem that you faced any issues, or you were not able to solve it? Anyone? Uh, Merge command explanation, I don't remember. I think it must be session 4, right? Probably. Okay. Okay, fine. So search string. James, what do you mean by search string? Question 5 and okay, so Sandrine says 5 and 7 from session 6. Okay, which is 5 and 7? Okay, so question 5 is the find customers whose phone number does not have any space. That one is it? Could not solve as was unable to insert records into table with date time error. Okay, so okay, fine. So from Murali, right? So Murali, if you're getting this error, right, date time error, the reason why you're getting this error is because when I shared the data set, I have shared four different data set, one for each RDBMS. So if you look at the data set file naming, there will be the name of the RDBMS. Whatever database you're using, whatever RDBMS you're using, you need to use the same file to load the data set. Because I saw that someone was using PostgreSQL database and they were trying to load the data from the MSSQL file. Okay, in that case, you will get this error datetime because some of the functions that are supported in PostgreSQL is not supported in MSSQL. Okay, especially when you are inserting the date values. Okay, and that is why you might get. And I think this specific error is because I'm using a function convert in the MSSQL file, and that convert function has I think the first argument is a date time, and that convert function and the date time function is actually not supported in other RDBMS. Okay, so that is why you'll get this error. So try to use the proper file. So where do I get Postgres? So all the data sets I have shared, right? So I shared one folder which has zipped for data set, and it has all the files for all the four RDBMS. So uh, try to use the proper files. Okay, so uh, okay, so Rahul tells fetch all the orders between Feb where the quantity ordered. Okay, what is that? Fetch all. Okay, that is 6. Okay, so 5, 6, and 7 is you have issues. Okay, okay, fine. So okay, so let's do one thing. I'm going to start now, and I'll just give you an overview of what you can expect during this week's classes. Okay, so today's class, I'm going to start by taking up those, I think, 9 SQL query assignments that I've given in the last session. So I'll show you the answers for all those 9 SQL queries. I know some of you guys told that They were pretty basic. Maybe after you understood all the concept that we covered, you found it very easy. But I'm sure there are others who might not have solved it, or who are starting from scratch. For them, this is very important. So I'm going to first show you the answers for all of these nine SQL assignments that I had given. Not just showing you the answers, but I'm going to explain you how you can solve it. Okay, that's the first part. Once we are done with that, we will then move on to today. I'll be starting with group by and having clause. Now it's a very important concept. So I'm going to tell you what exactly group by and having clause is. How does SQL actually execute queries containing those clauses? And then we will look at some solving some SQL queries using this. Okay. Once we are done with that, I have some set of queries. If I'm not able to solve all of them, I'll give it to you some assignments. Okay. And then in the next session, we are going to be starting with subqueries. Okay. For subqueries, we'll use a different data set. Okay. And then after we complete subqueries, we'll then look at, I think, yeah, the joins. Okay. Because we have only covered one type of join, that is inner join, but there are other type of joins as well. So we'll try to cover joins, and then we will move into with clause. Okay. So in this week, today we will be covering group by and having clause. The next session we start with subqueries, then we go into all the different type of joins, and then finally we go into with clause. I'm not sure if we'll be able to cover everything this week, but this is the plan. Whatever I'll be able to cover, I'll cover. Whatever is not able to cover, we'll move on to next week. Okay. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know once you are able to see my screen. Okay. Okay. So I hope you guys can see my screen. I'll just open. I'll connect to the sales order data set. Okay, fine. So these are all the assignments that I gave. And I think we had three tables in this data set, right? Which were the three tables? Okay, this one. Okay. So okay. So we are looking at the sales order data set, and just to give you an overview, so we have the sales order table, which has all the sales order details. Then the customer details is present in the customer table, and the product details are present here, right, in the products table. Now, let's look at one question at a time. So let's start with question number 3. Okay. So is there anyone who faced problem in solving this problem? In solving this particular question, did anyone face any issues? Is there any person? If anyone faced issue, just let me know. Okay, if anyone face issue, let me know so that I will try to solve it from scratch. If no one has an issue, then I think everyone has understood this concept. So I'll not um, try to solve it, right? So I'll just show you the solution. Okay. So I have the SQL query written here, no problem. Okay. So okay, so the question tells find all orders for planes, ships, and trains which are neither shipped nor in process nor resolved. Okay, I always tell whenever you have a problem, whether in an interview, whether you're working on a real time project, understanding the problem statement is the most important thing. And then comes understanding the data set that lies in your database, right? Which you need to solve that problem. Once you understand that data set and once you understand the problem statement, solving the query in most cases is actually pretty simple. Okay. Most cases we fail to solve a problem is because we do not understand the problem. Okay. Or we are not able to basically connect between how the data is stored and how the question is been asked, because sometimes the question will be asked in a tricky way. Okay, these are pretty straightforward questions, but let's look at. So what they're telling is we need to find all the orders for these three type of vehicles. right? And they're telling we should not consider if any order is present in any of these status. Okay, now we know that the status of, so this is not deal size. Okay, 1 minute. So if I go into my sales order table, my, if it is shipped or in process or resolved, I think it is present in the status column. So this has to be status. Okay. So in order to check if none of the orders belong to these status, I can just filter the data based on the status column from the status sales order table, as you can see here. And I'm telling not in. Okay. What is this not in? Not in basically will exclude any values that you have given within these parentheses. Okay. So I've given these three status values because this is what is mentioned in my question, right? And then they are telling I have to only include orders which belong to these three, or these three vehicles, right? So whenever I need to include, I need to add a filter when I where I need to consider records belonging to a certain list of values, then I can always use this in clause, right? This in keyword, and here I have given those values. So these are my two filter conditions that I need to include, and I know that the type of vehicles is present in my products table and the status of the orders is present in my sales order table, right? And that is why I need to use these two tables. Okay, and how do I join these two tables? It's pretty straightforward, because the only way you can join these two tables is by using the product code, right? The only one thing you need to remember here is the column names are different, right? In the product table, the product code is mentioned with the name product underscore code, whereas in the sales order table, the same value is present under the column product, right? So whenever you're joining two tables, it's not, you don't have to, you don't, it's not mandatory that the columns with which you are joining the tables has to be the same. The column names can be different. Okay, the only thing, the values has to be similar, right? You need to look at the values with which you can connect to tables, not by the column name. Okay, because sometimes two tables might have the same column name but the data might be completely different. Okay, so that's why don't blindly join a table just by looking at the column name. Always look at the data that is stored in that column. Okay, so that's why I'm joining like this, and I think we just did an inner join, sales order and orders table, and then I put the filter conditions. Pretty straightforward, right? So I hope it's pretty clear. And everyone who has not solved it, try to solve it without looking at this solution. Okay, so let's go on to the fourth one. I'll try to go a little quickly here so that we have time to cover the group by clause concept, but I don't want to hurry because uh, there are people who are starting from scratch, so you also need to have the time to understand. Okay, so one doubt here, inner join or left join, we have to use here. Okay, so Shiva, you're asking about this particular question, right? So f- as of now, we have only covered inner join. Okay. Now, in the probably in this week, I will be covering all the other type of joins. At that moment, I will tell you in which scenario you should be using which join. How do you come to know in which scenario which join you should be using? That one I will explain a little later in this week. Okay. So as of now, we are only looking at inner join. So all the assignment that I have given are also inner join. The simple reason why you need to use inner join here is I have not I have not basically given any explicit uh, statements in my query. So I have told find all orders for planes, ships, and trains which are neither in these three status. Okay. So basically, the scenarios where you may need to use different type of joins, you would find some hints in the question itself which will kind of give you an idea what type of join you should use. Okay, in this particular case, since it is very straightforward, it's telling me that fetch all the vehicles belonging to these three type of vehicle types which are in this particular status, right? So if you have these kind of straightforward questions, we always use an inner join. Okay, you will better understand the difference when I talk about other type of nuance a little later. Okay, now let's look at the question number 4. Find customers whose phone number has either parenthesis or a plus sign. Okay, now whenever you have, if you see an either, so if people are telling that fetch this record or this record, or fetch any record which has these values, or it might have these kind of values. Okay, whenever they're using this kind of a statement, then you should know that we need to fetch records which match either this or the other. Okay, in that case the best way of doing this is by using the or operator. Okay, and here since I have told that you need to find a value where the entire column value might have some characters. In this case this is the characters, parentheses or the plus sign, right? The best way of solving this is by using the uh, like operator. Okay, and here I already explained this percentage basically will match with any number of records. So I'm just telling, hey SQL, go to the customers table and fetch only those records where the phone column has values. So it can have any number of values in the beginning, but somewhere in between it should have a plus operator, and then after plus operator again it can have any number of any kind of values, zero or more number of any characters. Okay, and the same thing I'm doing for plus, then for open parenthesis, and then for close parenthesis. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Now there are other type of doing this kind of search. Someone asked the other day about I like, and then we have similar to we have POSIX, that is the regular expressions. I'll not be covering all of that. One of the reasons is because these regular expressions, everything like there will be slight difference in different databases. But by using this like, right, this concept is same across all the RDBMS. Okay, I'm not sure if I like is supported in other RDBMS. I know it is supported in PostgreSQL. Not sure about other. In PostgreSQL, we also have something called as similar to, but I'll not get into all that. But if anyone is interested in learning that, right, I'm actually planning to make a YouTube video on that. So maybe you can cover that. So this regular expression thing was not part of the scope for this course. Okay. Now let's go into the question number 5. Find customers whose phone number does not have any space. I saw some of the questions or like some messages to and from in the Telegram group regarding this. Did anyone face any issues with this? What was the challenging part for this particular question? I know someone asked to solve this problem. So, what was the challenging part here? So, I'm asking you to find customers whose phone number does not have any space. So, when I'm straight away telling you to find only customers, I know that the only table that I need to use here is the customers table, right? And in customers table, my phone number is present in my column 4. So, I'm telling if there is any phone number who has space, exclude them. You can see here, I think this line number 3, right? You can see after 3 3 there is a space, then 1 space, then 4 6 space, etc. So if any phone number is having spaces, I need to exclude those records, right? So whenever you have this kind of a requirement, what you can do is, of course, it has to be part of the filter condition. So I'm going to be using a where clause, and I know the column where I need to put the filter is the column phone. And here I'm telling whose phone number does not have any spaces. So this matters. So it's telling does not, right? So that means I need to basically match any phone number which does not have a space. So I can just tell not like, and like as many people have already solved. If I just put this, I think it should fetch me the 54 customers whose, if you see all the phone numbers here, none of these phone numbers will have a space, right? So let's say instead of space, I wanted to exclude any customers whose phone number had a dot. Okay, so in that case, instead of space, I could put a dot here, and then I could execute. Then it would exclude any phone number where there was a dot. Okay, so same way, if I wanted to exclude any phone number which had a dash, you can see here some of the phone numbers is having this dash. Okay, dash or hyphen or whatever you call it. So if I execute this, now you can see any phone number with the dash is excluded. Okay, so it's just that I'm using this like operator. So like will match whatever value that you have given here. Not like will exactly do the opposite of that. Okay, so for space we just give a space here. Okay, as you can see here. Okay, what happens if I give double space? Now can you tell me, now if I execute this query, can you tell me what happens now? Anyone? Okay, no data. Okay, so if you're using double space, what happens is it's going to search in the phone number field. Is there any phone number where there are two spaces? Okay, so if I execute this, so okay, so if I execute now, I'm getting 92, And when I executed this, I got 54, right? So, okay. Totally, how many records in customers? 92. So what is happening is it's basically returning me every record. Why? There are no phone numbers in the customers table who is having whose phone number is having double spaces. Okay. So for SQL, a single space is different from a double space. For us, it might look similar in our naked eye, but for an SQL programming language, if you are filtering based on a single space and if you are filtering based on a double space, they are two different things. Okay. And the same thing applies when you are the other day in the Telegram group, I saw someone was searching for some filter based on net banking. Okay, so I think he was searching for something like net banking, and he was not getting any record. The thing was, net banking was stored in the table as net space banking. Okay, so this space matters. And instead of net space banking, if you put double spaces, then also it's a different thing for SQL. Okay, so even though something might look very similar in to our eyes, does not mean SQL is going to treat it the same. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Now let's move on to the sixth one, and I think there are a lot of chats about question number six. So let's try to solve it right here. Fetch all the orders between Feb 2003 and May 2003 where the quantity order was an even number. Okay, so again they are telling fetch all the orders, right? That means I need to look into my orders table. So first of all, I just tell select from where, right? This is how I start my query. And I know that the table that I need to use is the sales order, right? Because I am only interested in fetching the orders. And then I need to put some filter conditions. So they're telling any order between Feb 2003 and May 2003. So I can say, okay, what does my orders table have? What is the columns? So my so I have order date, right? I can also do that by using this quarter ID, month ID, or year ID fields, but I think in this case we can straightforward do it by using the order date. So I'm just going to say order date, and I can say between. So it is Feb 2003. So they have just told Feb 2003. They have not told any specific date. So we can consider first Feb. Okay. So I can just tell to date and 01 Feb 2003, and the format that I will give is DDMON and what is that 2003. Sorry, 1234. Okay, and then so I'll copy the same thing and this, and this will be May. So May is having how many days? 31, right? So May 31st. And okay, so this will basically fetch me any orders which falls between the 1st of Feb and the last of May. Okay, that's the first thing. And then they have told one more additional condition where quantity ordered was an even number, right? The other day I already told you how do you find if a number is odd or even. If you just do a modulus on that number, if that modulus of that number returns 0, then it is what? It is an even number. If it returns 1, it is an odd number. Okay, we can do that by using the percentage symbol. So let me try to do that. Quantity ordered was an even number. So what is quantity ordered? We have this column, right? So quantity ordered. So I can just tell quantity ordered, and I can tell percentage 2 is equal to what's an even number. So it has to be 0, right? Because whatever number, when you do a modulus or mod by 2, it will return 0 if it's an even number, right? So I hope this is going to return me the record. So 101 record. Has everyone done solved the problem in the same way, or is there anyone who tried a different way of solving this problem? Okay. Uh, I'm going to share all the solutions with you after this class. And one thing I want to tell is, in many cases, my solution might be different from your solution. And that's the beauty of SQL. You can solve an SQL problem in several different ways. If you found a different way or a better way to solve a problem than what I have used, you can share it in the Telegram group or here. Okay. We would also like to see what different way you have used to solve the problem. Okay. Uh, yeah, you can share it two different ways if you have used to solve the problem. Okay. Can you run the fourth query? So I ran the fourth query here. Okay. So any questions that you have, right? Try to put it in the Q&A tab, because in the Q&A I see only two questions. If there is any question, try to put it in the Q&A tab. So when I take a break, I look into the questions. Okay. Because otherwise I'll miss the questions here. How can we know the format of the date? Okay, so good question from Murthy. How do you know the format of the date? Now, a date value can be in several different formats. So this is one of the formats. Okay, so generally we this is basically the date, right? DD, right? A date will always be a numeric value. So it will be from 01 to 31st. That's it, right? It cannot have any other value. So the date format will always be like this, right? Day, okay, DD. Whereas when it comes to a month can be represented in many different ways, right? So a month can be represented from 1 to 12, a numeric value. A month can also be represented like Jan to December, right? A month can also be represented like the full name, right? So January to December, etc., right? So in if you want to represent a month in this particular in this particular format, we can just say like okay. And if you want to represent the month in three character, in this way, right? Jan to December, the short form, then we can use this format month, okay. And I think for this one, right, the entire name, I think we can use something called as month, okay, but I'm not sure if this is supported in all the RDBMS, okay, but this one is supported in every single RDBMS, okay. And when it comes to the date format, we generally mention a date format. So, for example, let's say uh, 10th Jan 2020, okay. The same date can also be represented like 10 10/01/2020, okay, or it can also be represented like 01 slash 10 slash 2020, okay. And there can be many other formats as well. So for example, some people might use a dot, so 10/01/2020, okay, or some people might just tell it like 0 uh, 10 01/20, okay. This also can be a date format. If you ever use an Excel file, and if you right click, if you just put a date value and right click and then click on the format cells, and you see the date formats, you will see all the different types of date formats, okay. So these are all the different types of date formats. The only thing, whenever you are using any function, when you need to use a format, what you need to do is, wherever you have the date, you put DD, and depending on the month, if it's a three character month or a numeric value of the month, then you put or MON, okay, and then you put for the year YYYY. If your year only has two characters, then you can put YY also, okay. And then depending on what is your separator, in this case my separator is a dash, so I put, so here it is a dash, so I put here also dash. In this case, instead of dash, let's say if I had put dot, then I have to put a dot, okay. So let's say if I put a dot here, let's see if this works. I'll put a dot. Okay, maybe this one I'll keep it the same, and let's try to execute this. Okay, so I'm getting 102. I think it's previously how much I got. I still got 101, right? So yeah, so it's the same. So the only thing is SQL will internally convert your date into this format depending on whatever the format that you have given here. Okay, so I'm going to be taking a separate session on all the inbuilt functions. Okay, in that session, I'm going to be covering all these inbuilt functions like to date, because this to date works in Oracle and PostgreSQL. But when you come to MySQL, you need to use a different function called as date format. Okay, and then in Microsoft SQL Server, you can use convert, or I think there are other functions as well. So I'll try to make a list of all these. Most widely used functions, date functions, string functions like substring, intstring, and many other type of functions. I'll try to make an Excel file with the list of that, and then I will share it with you in one of the sessions, probably next week. Okay, so we'll cover that. Now let's quickly go to the question number 7. Find orders which sold a product for price higher than its original price. Okay, anyone struggled with this question? Pretty straightforward, right? I'm just going to paste the solution here rather than solving it myself, because just to save time. Even though you used DDMM, the output was still year first. What was that? So Rivan is telling, even though you use DDMM, the output. Okay, so this is one thing that you need to remember. This I have used this format only for filtering. Okay, when displaying, I have just used star. So, however, whatever format is used to by the database to store this date, right? In that same format, it is being displayed. So whatever format I have given here and whatever is being displayed by this select clause, there is no relation between them. If I want to change the format in which the date is displayed, then I have to give a format here. Okay, so let's try to do that. Let's see if that works. Okay, so I'll do a s dot star, then this one happens. Now let's say I am going to say yes dot order date, right? So if I execute this, I'll get the order date here. But if I want to change the format of that, so let's say I'm going to use this format. Okay, so I'll say this, and I'll say this. Now I'll execute this. Execute this. Order this order here. To date, order date, comma this function to date does not exist. Why does a function? Is there a typo that I'm doing here? Argument types. You need to add explicit cast. Okay, so what is this order date? Okay, sales order date is a date. So order date. You can simply use extract. We can use the extract function also, but I'm just thinking why does to date does not work. There are many different functions. You can use extract to extract a specific month or year or date from a date, but because this to date works here, but it does not work here. No function matches a given name again. You might need to add explicit typecast. Okay, so I can fix it like this, but I'm not sure why I need to do this as date unknown does not exist. Okay, so let me come back to you on this. Okay, I'm not really sure why this to date does not work. Uh, yeah, so not sure. Okay, if anyone is aware of why to date does not work in the select clause, but it works here, just let me know, or else maybe regarding this I'll come back. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say order date. I'm just going to copy this, so whatever things is on me, right, I'll make a note of that. So I'll just write it, check why to date does not work in select clause. Okay, so I'll not spend time now trying to figure out this, but maybe I will get back to you on this in the next class. Let me just save this. Okay, so whatever open questions that I have that I've not been able to answer you, I'll try to make a note of that. So open questions. Okay, and I'll try to come back in next class. Okay, okay, so do we need to add yes dot to order date? It does not matter. It's not mandatory. It's an alias. Alias is not mandatory. If there are two tables with the same column name, then it is mandatory. But here we are only using one table. Try use with alias because to date is not the field. That's why to to date is not the field. To date is a function. That is what we have used here, right? Here it works, right? So let's say many people are telling to use alias. Let's see if that works. I think function to date, is it this format? To date. No function matches the given name argument types. Okay, so I'll come back to you on this later in the next class. Okay. Okay, so digital tech connect, I think this might be a valid case because generally what happens is every database in there are some set of parameters, and date format is also an parameter which is predefined by the database for each session. Okay, in this case the database date format is YYYYMMDD. So let's try to use that format and let's see if that works. Okay, so I'm just going to say YYYYMMDD and let's see now if this works. Now also it does not work, but I think to care will work. To care works, but then let's say if I do to date on this, and now it works. And now let's do one thing. I'll change the format. I'll change the format to this one. It worked, but the format is still the same. Okay, so I understand what the problem was. The the thing is, this particular order date is already a date, right? And this to date function is a function that is used to convert a character to a date. Okay, so here previously what I was trying to do was I was trying to convert a date into a date again, and I was using this to date function, and that is why it was not allowing me to convert a date into a date again, because order date was already a date. So what I did was I used another function here called as toChar. toChar basically will convert is used to convert any date to a character, or a number to a character, etc. Okay, so I tried to convert this date into a character and I gave this particular format, and then once this has become a character, then I tried to convert it into a date. So to make it more clear, let's do one thing. I'm just going to copy this and I'll say this is my date, and I'll put this column here, and I'll say this is my character. Okay, and now if I execute this, you can see here. So if you see here, the first column is a date, okay, because initially I converted into a character and then I again converted into a date, okay. And the second column here is basically I have converted this date into a into a character, and you can see the data type here is telling as text. Text is basically another uh, data type which basically holds the string values, or it's a text, okay, similar to varchar. And here the format, you can see it has followed this particular format, okay. But from this particular format, when I again try to convert it into the date with that same format and I'm trying to display it, it's still displaying in the old format only. The reason for this, I'm sure, is because, as I told you, there are certain parameters, okay. uh, so they are called as NLS parameters in Oracle. I'm not sure what they are exactly called in other RDBMS. But what these NLS parameters are is, there are some predefined parameters. So what is the date format for an database? What And all the other details about the database stuff, okay. These are something that generally a DBA deals with, but I think in this particular database the default date format is YYYYMMDD. So even though I have changed it, when it's displaying in this, okay. I'm sure there is a way to change that date format. I think we can go to preferences, or we can manually change it by using some database tables, but that's not required for us. It's mainly done by a DBA. If you are interested, let me know. I'll try to Google that and I will tell you. Okay. But okay, so that's about this date format. We can use anything. We can use MO. I'm using MON in this case is because Feb is 3 characters, right? If I try to use a MM here, it's going to throw me an error. Okay. So for example, if I use MM here, it's going to throw me an error because it's telling invalid value FE. Why? Because only it took 2 characters here and the 2 characters were FE. So if I want to consider the 3 character month, then I need to say MON. Okay. So that's the thing. Okay. So we spent too much time in this. Now let's move on to the seventh one. I'm just going to paste the question solution here. Okay. So the seventh one tells find orders which sold products for higher price than the original price. Can you tell me uh, what are the two tables that I need to use that you have used to solve this particular problem? Question number 7. Have you solved it using just one table or two tables? If two tables, which were the two tables? Anyone? Sales order and product. Why? Why have you used these two tables? Anyone? Okay. To find the max, you need to find the max here? Okay. The reason why you need to use two tables here is here they're telling find orders. So they're telling us to find only orders. So it looks like the only thing that we need to display is the order details, right? But they're telling which sold products for prices higher than its original price. So first of all, we need to know in the orders, whenever a product was sold, we need to know what was the price of that product in specific to that order. Okay, and then we also need to know what was the original price, and then we need to compare. Okay, we need to see wherever the original price was different from the price that was sold in the order, we need to display that record, right? Okay, so here it's telling not the difference for prices higher than its original price. Okay, so not the difference, but prices higher than its original price. So how we have solved this problem is in this way. So we need to use sales order and product. Why? Because the original price, I think, is present in the products table, right? Because if I go into my products table, you can see here for every product, there is a price that is given. This is actually the original price because the products table is kind of like the master table, which has information about every product and its price, right? But in the sales order table, this is the price at which the particular product was sold. Now, any agent or any company can sell a product for more price, right? Because for the same product in Amazon you might see a different price, for in Flipkart you might see a different price, right? But the actual cost of the product you might actually see in the company website, like let's say Apple iPhone. Okay, so the iPhone's original price you would find it in the Apple website, and that is what this is. This product is something like a master table where you will find the original price and the price at which it was actually sold by in Amazon or Flipkart or whatever. That is what you will see here, price of each product, right? And in many cases this might be different, right? And here they asked us to not find a different, but they asked us to find wherever the sold price was more than the original price. So we just need to put this simple arithmetic operator here, that is greater than, to find this solution. Okay, I hope this is clear, nothing too complex about this. And then, okay, so then the remaining four, I think I think I will not solve this remaining four problems. I'll not show you, I'll not explain it here, but I'll just show you the solution, okay, for these four. So I have the solution for these four here, and it's pretty simple. We need to find the average order price, and I told you that we have these aggregate functions: average, count, sum, min, max, and you can find all these solutions using this aggregate function. So in the first question we had to find average sales. In the second questions we had to find a total number of orders. In the third question we needed to find the total quantity sold. Okay, and then we needed, the last one, we needed to find the, I think, the first order date and the last order date. Okay, so nothing here, there is basically no joins, no filter condition. You just need to use the aggregate function to find the solution. So nothing too complex about this. So I'm going to stop this here and I'm going to start with group by now. If anyone has any questions about these assignment questions, then ask me in the Q&A tab. Let me look into that. Okay. If not, I'm going to start with group by and having clause. Okay. So again, I'm going to consider the same three tables. Okay. Now I'm just going to look at any questions that you have. Yes, I am going to be sharing the answers after the class. Okay. So yeah. In the Q&A tab, what questions? In sales order database, there is a lot of data. How do we select the query to run? How do we select the query to run? Meaning how to scroll down with select using shift tab. It's taking a lot of time. In order sales table, there is a lot of data. Okay, so in the order sales table, there is a lot of data. How do we select the query to run? Meaning how to scroll down with select. So you mean you want to select all the records one by one, is it? So just click on any record here on this button and then just press, I think, shift. So the shift doesn't work. Okay. Okay, I think you can press this one. So you see this blank tab or whatever this is. You just click on that. I think every record is selected. And then let's say if I don't know if this copy works. Let's see if the copy works. The copy does work if I have to, but I don't know why you want to do that because, yeah. Okay, so you can select it like this. Okay. For the question four, can we use rejects? Okay, so for question four, you don't need to use rejects. you can use regex. Okay, you can solve the problem using regex, but it is like when you can, it's, they say, right, when you can eat like this, you are trying to eat it putting your arm around your head. Okay, it's like that. For simple searches, we should not be using regex. We use regex when we need to do a search based on certain pattern. Okay, so for example, you have a very big text file or some records where there are a mixture of all the values like phone numbers, your address, your names, and your fax codes, and etc etc, and your email etc, and in this entire list you only want to find your email id, then using a regex is the best approach. Okay, because every email id will have a format, right? There will be a name, there might be an at symbol, there will be some, again, some characters, then dot. So based on this pattern you can do a search. So whenever you have to do this kind of a search, this is where we use regex. For simple searches where you had to find if there was a space or a parenthesis or something, we don't use regex, we use just like. Okay, can you explain q for one more time? Fatima, can you? Okay, so this is question number 4, right? What are we actually doing? Nothing. So we need to find phone numbers which has any of these three characters. So plus, open parenthesis, and close parenthesis. So these are three different characters we need to find. So I am, what I'm doing is I'm writing three different filter conditions. Okay, and I'm splitting each of these filter conditions basically by putting a or. So these are three different filter conditions. Only thing is all these three filter conditions are on the same column, phone number. Okay, and I'm putting a like symbol because I only need to find one character in that record. I'm not trying to do an entire search. Okay, so I'm doing like, and then I'm putting this percentage, which I've already explained in the previous class. What it does, it just matches zero or more characters, and then I'm basically, first I have put a filter condition to search plus, then I put a filter condition to search the two different parentheses, and I have put the operator or, because any record that might have any of these values, it has to match. Okay, if I put and, then it's going to look for a phone number which has these three values. Basically, it's going to look for these three values in that particular record. Okay, so if you are not clear, try to go back into some of the previous session where I have explained like and or. You need to understand what or does and what like does in order to solve this problem. Okay, which I've already explained in the previous class. What's incorrect with this question 5? What's incorrect with this question 5? Where is your question 5? What, I did not understand, James. What would happen if you not put to date in question 6? In PostgreSQL, I think if you don't put to date here, nothing will happen, because by default, even if I had given just this month, it would work. Okay, but when it comes to some other tools, some other IDE or some other RDBMS, you always have to convert a text into a date by using any of the date functions. Okay, select from sales order where order between this. Okay, the same thing. Mod. Okay, so James has given a query. Let's try to see what's wrong with this particular problem. You're getting the output, but you're getting wrong output, is it? So, what was the solution that we got for question number 6? Okay, so I'm just going to remove. Okay, let it be. I got 101 records, and you got is equal to 0. Okay, so what does this mod of this do? Anyone know why you're getting different records here? Anyone can you guys guess what is the reason you're getting wrong? So here he's getting 116 records, but ideally you should get 101 records, right? So this is February MMDD. Okay. So can anyone guess why he's getting 15 more records? Total date, not month number. Total date. Okay, so first of all, I just want to know this. What does this mod do? So let's say 232. This is working fine, right? And then, so the problem must be somewhere here. So 2013, because you have not specified any format. So SQL is going to treat the default format, that is YYYYMMDD. So let's see if, no. Okay, so let's do one thing. Order by order date. So, okay, so order date is starting from April 1st. And what is the max date? 28. Okay, okay. So the problem is pretty straightforward. Can anyone tell me why this query is giving the wrong output? Anyone? If you look at this query carefully, you'll come to know what is the problem. Can anyone guess? Okay, so Hem is correct because he's using a wrong column here. Quarter ID is not the quantity ordered. You need to use this column, quantity ordered. So you're using a wrong column. I think it was James, right? Okay, fine. So I hope that is clear. And where were we? I think we answered some questions. Okay, so I'm going to stop with this Q&A for now. I'll get back to this Q&A tab a little later. Okay, so let's go back to group by. Now, I want to ask one question. Can anyone explain in the most simplest of terms what is group by and what is having? Okay, maybe first just explain, telling me in simple words, what does a group by do? Categorization groups the rows, group by sorting, it is segregating, categories entries, it's create groups, smaller data. Okay, so Nandini tells it create groups with smaller data. It does group similar data like filtering, grouping data. Okay, so I think you guys have some understanding already. Let me explain that. Okay, so let's look at maybe I'm going to look at I need a smaller table. So let's look at maybe, yeah, look at the products table. Okay. So in the products table, you can see I have some product code, which I think is a primary key. So there will be unique records. Then I have product line and then I have price. Okay. So what exactly is a group by is, as the name suggests, whenever you group by any record, whatever columns you have given in your group by, it's going to create one group for every value that is present in that column. Okay, so for example, let's say if I do select from products, group by product line, okay, and let's say I put this product line here, and if I run this, okay, what basically happening is it's telling SQL, hey SQL, go to the products table and group the data in the products table based on this column, that is product line. Okay. So when I tell group the data based on this column, what it will do is it will go to that table, it will see every distinct values that is present in that column, and for every distinct value it's going to create one group. Okay, so here even though you see that we have 7 different values, these are actually 7 different groups. Okay, why? Because in this table there were 7 distinct product line values in this particular table, so for each distinct value it created one group. Okay, now this is different from distinct clause. Okay, in distinct clause, so for example, let's say I executed another query here, and here I will tell distinct, and if I run this, you're getting the same output. Okay, so the output that you got from here and the output that you got from here are the same. Okay, but the concept is completely different. Okay, here the output that you have got and the 7 values that you are seeing, these 7 are not just values. Of course they are values, but they are also groups. Okay, and when I say groups, what this means is under each of these groups there are again some other list of records. Okay, and you can do certain calculations on those groups, okay, using aggregate functions. Okay, now when you see this distinct by here, all these 7 are just values. Okay, they are not groups. Okay, they are just normal single values. Okay, this is the only thing that you can do with distinct. You cannot do anything else. Okay, uh, so we'll talk about this difference a little later also. But now when I executed this, it created a group. And then since I told you that each value here is a group, and each group contains maybe one or more number of records within that group, I can apply certain aggregate functions to do certain calculations. For example, let's say for each of this product line, I can tell what is the total number of products that is present under each of this product category or product line, right? So I can do that by using an aggregate function count of one. Okay, so if I execute this, what happens is you can see that it's telling me there are totally 37 classic cars, there are 3 trains, there are 12 planes, 11 trucks and buses, and so on and so forth. Okay, now previously what previous classes what we have seen is we have just seen select count of one from products, right? So when I executed this, it returned me 109. What this was doing was here we were not using any group by clause. So internally, just a minute. So internally, what it did was it went to the products table and it saw totally how many number of records were present. It saw that there are totally 109 records. So that is why it returned 109. Okay. In this case, in the above case here, I'm still using count of one. Okay. But the difference is here the count of one was applied for the entire table, but here the count of one will apply for each group one at a time. Okay. So initially, so for example, initially, when I executed just this product line, group by product line, without using any aggregate functions, it gave me all the 7 groups. And then when I executed these 7 groups with this count of one, for each group, it applied this count of one. So it went. So what happens when this query gets executed is SQL will go into the products table. It will group the data based on product line. So it will get 7 groups. And for each of this group, it will see that I am also asking you to count the number of records. So for each group, so first it will start with classic cars. It will go into the products table. It will fetch all the records where the product line value is classic cars, and it will count the number of records. So it will come to know there are 37 records in the products table which has classic cars. There are 3 records in the products table which has the value as trains in the product line, and so on and so forth. So this is what a group by does. Okay, now I can also group by based on any column. So for example, let's say instead of products, instead of product line, if I did a group by based on some other column. So let's say I have product code column. Okay, if I execute this, now can you tell me how many groups will be created and how many records will be written? Anyone? How many groups will be created for product code? This table totally has, I think, 110 records, right? No, 109 records. So when I run this product code, how many groups will be created? So Abhay tells error. Okay. So I'm going to get 109 groups when I execute this. As you can see, there are 109 rows. Why? Because product code is a primary key. Okay. And when I'm going to create a group by on a primary key, it's going to basically create one group for each unique value in that column. Product code will always have unique values only because it's a primary key, right? So there are 109 records, so it's going to create 109. It's going to create 109 groups. Okay. Now my next question is, if that is the case, can I apply a aggregate function here or no, or will it throw an error? Because every group here is just having one record, right? So can I apply a aggregate function here, or do you think it's going to throw an error? Because I created a group by on a primary key column. So when you say no, what do you mean? It's going to throw error or no error? No error, is it? You can apply. Okay. So the answer is yes, we can apply. It does not matter. I do group by on a primary key column or any normal column. It does not matter. But in most cases, if you are doing a group by on a primary key column, it does not really make sense. But I don't know. There might be certain scenarios where it might be useful as well. Okay. So here also I can do a count of one. Okay. For example, and if I execute this, we can see that I'm getting 109 records. But the only thing is every value for this count column will be one. As you can see, it's all one. Why? Because every group only has one record. Okay, so here because I created a group by on a primary key column, each groups that was created will have only one record. But above, when I did it based on the product line, because different product lines can have different number of records, you can see the difference I am found using the count. Okay, now this is one thing about group by, but I can also do a group by using multiple columns. So it's not that you can do a group by just by using one column, but also you can use multiple columns. So for example, uh, let's take some table. So I'll take maybe, okay, so I'll take the customers table now. Okay, and I'll go to the customers table here. Okay, and let's say I'm going to do a group by country. Okay, so now I'm going to execute this. Can anyone tell me, will this query work or is it going to throw an error? Anyone? Error? Okay. Why error? Error. So everyone tells error and number of columns. Okay, right. Why error is because now whenever you're using group by, there are certain rules that you need to follow. The rule number one and the most important rule is with whichever column that you have done group by, okay, that same column has to be there in your select clause. Okay, and so if I'm doing group by one particular column, then only that one column has to be in the select clause. Other than that one column, you can include any number of functions. You can call any aggregate functions or maybe other type of functions, but the columns that you will be using the select clause has to be only those columns which you have mentioned in your group by. So if I execute this, it's going to throw an error telling that, so it's telling customer ID. Okay, must appear in the group by clause. Okay, so it's not customer ID. I think the error message is not very clear, but basically we need to have the country here. Okay, now if I execute this, now you can see that it's created 19 groups because I think there are 19 different countries in this particular table. Okay, now let's say other than country, I also have another column city. Now if I execute this, now it's going to throw me an error. Okay, so here it's going to throw an error telling that because I'm using a city in my select clause, but I'm not used city in my group by clause, it's going to throw an error. So the number of columns that you mention here and the number of columns you mentioned in the group by has to be the same. Okay, the only thing is you can include any number of aggregate functions, that is fine. Okay, now let's say instead of this one, I will tell max of city. Okay, and if I run, does does this work or do you think this is going to throw an error? Anyone? Error? Okay, so Iram tells error. Why will this throw error? Okay, so Kanishka tells it will work. Okay, and I think it will work. Okay, why it will work is there is no, it's not mandatory that you need to use your max function or min function with an integer only. Okay, max will also work with characters, a string data type. Why? The only thing is it's going to do this what is that, minimum or max based on the character. So in an English alphabet, a character is considered minimum, z is considered the maximum character. Okay, and it's going to start from the very first character. So in this case, so when I do a max, so for example I'm just going to take okay, but before that I want to just show you, okay, something. So let's say I have this country and I'll say count of one. So I have, okay, Spain. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a where condition here where country equal to Spain. Okay. And now if I run this, I'm getting Sevilla. Okay. So, but if I do one more thing, so if I go into my customers table, select star from, or let's say select city from customers, country, comma, city from customers, where let's say country equal to Spain. If I run this, you can see that I'm getting, okay. So in my table customers, under uh, the records where the country is Spain, I have totally 5 records. And in these 5 records, you can see the value of city is Madrid, Barcelona, and Sevilla. Okay. Now, when I executed this max of city, it returned me this Sevilla, right? Why? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but I'll call it Sevilla for now. But why is it returning Sevilla? Because it's doing a max here. How does max actually work with varchar? Okay, it's like, as I told you, a, the character a is the least value, z is the maximum value. So in this case, m is okay, b is basically smaller than m, okay, and then s is greater than both m and b, right? So this particular value starts with s, so it has a higher precedence or something, and that's why the max will return this Sevilla. But let's say with max, if I also put a min here, and if I do min of city, and now if I run, which should come, it should basically return Barcelona, right? Because b is the least character in this particular value, and that's what it is returning. Okay, so your max and min will work with character also. Okay, it's not going to throw an error. Okay, now you can see here in my group by clause, I used only one column. Okay. But in my select clause, I have used country and I've used city, but still it worked. But previously I told you any columns that you're using in your group by clause, only those columns has to be there in your select clause. Okay. With one exception, and that exception is that if you want to specify any other column, then that column has to be within an aggregate function. In that case, your group by will work. Okay. Is this all clear about group by? Now, along with this, if it's all clear, I'll ask you one question. So let's say, okay, I'm not going to rewrite this query, but I'll just copy and paste it here. And let's say now, along with this group by country, I'm also going to do a group by city. Okay. And now I want to run this. Now, will it work or will it not work? Works. It works. Okay. Many people are telling works and some are telling it will not work. Ideally, with the explanation that I have given, it should not work, right? So, but here it will work. The reason is because when I'm doing a group by country and city, I am already using this city inside aggregate function. So this is the third rule that you need to remember. The rule number 1 I told was for rules for group by. Okay. The first rule is column list in group by and select should match. Okay, this is the first rule. Okay, any additional column in select clause must be within the aggregate functions. Okay, the third thing is what we saw here. Okay, I'm using two different columns in the group by clause, but only one of those columns I'm mentioning like separately, and the other column I have put it in the aggregate function. And this one will work. Why? Because I can also, the reason why this will work is because, for example, I'll show you with another example here just to make it more easier to understand. So let's say I'm going to copy this, okay, and I'm going to put it here, and I'll completely remove all of these columns, and let's say I'll just put a count of 1. Okay, so if I do this, this will also work. Okay, so what this means is whatever column that you have given in the group by clause, it's not mandatory that every column you need to mention here until and unless your select clause only has aggregate functions. Okay, or it has only columns which is already mentioned here. Okay, so the next thing is you select clause only has aggregate functions. Okay, or the fourth one is group by columns should either be present in select clause as standalone columns or within the aggregate functions. Okay. Now, these are the four things you need to remember whenever you're using group by. Okay. The reason why I'm giving this explanation is because there are different variations you can do by using a group by clause, and sometimes uh, you might not remember when you're starting to learn. So that is why, if you remember these four things, I think you will be pretty much clear. Okay. Now, just to explain everything once again. Okay. So whenever you do a group by on a particular column, for every unique value, SQL is going to create one group. Okay. And over that group, each group, so each value that is returned represents one group, and each of these group can have one or more records. Okay. And for each of these groups, you can apply any aggregate function. Okay. That's the most important thing that you need to remember. And the second thing is, whenever you are doing a group by, it's not mandatory that since you have done a group by, you have to use those columns in your select clause. You can also just use the aggregate functions. The only difference is, for example, so let's say I used a count of one somewhere here. Okay, right here. So let's say I'm going to execute this here. Okay, so if I execute this here, and if I do a group by product line, now you can see here I'm just doing a count of one of products. Okay, here also I'm doing count of one of products, but I'm doing a group by. But the result of both these queries will be different. Here I'm getting the data as 109. Why? Because entire record from that table is basically one result set or one group. So for that one entire group, it's telling me the count. But when I run this query here, you can see I'm getting seven different records. Okay, the reason is, internally, SQL created one group for each distinct value in the product line column. And for each of those group, it's basically applying this count of one. Okay. And even though I'm not displaying the product line column here, still the group by has internally happened, right? And this count of one has internally applied for each of those groups. And that is why you're getting seven records. Okay. So this can actually be a tricky question during an interview. Okay. An interviewer might ask, what can you tell me if both these queries will return the same number of record, and explain. So this is what it is. Okay. So I hope that is clear. And one more thing that I want to explain here is, how did this particular query work? Okay. So first of all, let's copy this entire thing here, and I'm just going to put it here. Okay. And Spain. Mm, okay, so I'll put one more thing here. And the first thing that I want to explain is, let's say, count of one. Okay, so, and I want to explain one more thing here. Okay, I just want to explain different variations in a group by. Okay, let me know if it is too confusing or if it is too many things. The first thing that I want to explain is, okay, so I'm only looking at data where the country is Spain, for example, just so that the number of records will be small, so it becomes easier for me to explain. So if I execute this, can you tell me, first of all, let's go into the countries table. Under the Spain, we know that there are five records. Now, can you tell me, you guys tell me what will be the output? So when I execute this query, how many records will be returned? Anyone? So I'm doing a group by country, and I'm putting only for one country, and I'm doing a count of one. How many records will get returned? Only one record will get returned. Okay, fine. So only one record will get returned. Why? I'm creating one group. I'm creating a group on country, but since I only selected one country, so it's only going to create one group. And as I told you, group by will always return one record for each group. Okay, so this is also kind of an reason why in many cases, instead of group by, we will need to use a window function. Okay, because group by will always not always, but group by can reduce the number of records in your table. Because even if your table is having 100 records, and let's say your product line, there are 10 different products, it's going to return only one record for each group. Okay, so the number, if there are multiple records for a group, it will still return just one record. Okay, that is why the number of records will reduce. Okay, now this is correct, you guys all told it correct. Now, when I execute this, can you tell me how many records will I get now in this case for the second query? Anyone? 2. Okay, so Aaron tells 2. Anyone else? 1 to 5. Oh, or 1.5. What is that, Rajesh? Okay, so Kiran Reddy tells 5. Okay, so Shantanu tells 3, and I think Shantanu is right. So let's execute this. You can see it's going to return 3. Why? Because previously we saw Spain had 3 cities: Barcelona, what is that? Sevilla and Madrid, right? That is what we saw previously, right? And what happened was in this particular case, so I'm just going to uh, run the data here. Select star from this. Okay, and if I execute this, you can see that from the customer table where the country is Spain, I have 5 records. But if I look at the city, I have Madrid, Barcelona, and Sevilla. So Madrid is basically present in 3 different records. But when I did a group by based on country and city, what SQL will do is it's going to take the combination of these 2 columns. So it's going to take the combination of So it's going to take the combination of these 2 columns. So Spain, Madrid is one group, but Spain, Madrid, already one group is created. So forget about that. Then Spain, Barcelona, it's going to create a second group. Then Spain, Sevilla, it's going to create a third group. Okay. So these duplicate values will not be ignored, but there will always be one group created for similar values. So kind of like what a distinct does. Okay. So that is why when I ran this particular query, since I'm giving a group by country and city, it's going to create a group for each distinct value for the combination of these 2 columns. So the combination of these 2 columns, Spain, Madrid, one group, Spain, Barcelona, one group, and Spain, Sevilla, one more group. Okay. So for those 3 groups, then it's going to apply this count of 1, and that is why it's going to return only 3 records. And you can see here, so let's say I can also print city here. Okay. So if I want to display, so the thing is, whatever you want to display here, you can either mention whatever columns is mentioned here, or you don't have to mention all the columns, or you can mention less number of columns, but you cannot mention more than what is mentioned here. Okay, so country and city is both present here. So even if I just run it with the country, it will display country. If I put a city here, it will display both country and city. Okay, but let's say instead of country and city, if I put something else, what other column does this table have? um, it has, let's say, state. Okay, so if I put, where was that? Okay, here. So if I put here country, city, and state, and now if I run this, now it's going to throw an error. Okay, so what this means is whatever columns you have mentioned here, those columns you it's like not mandatory. You can, or you may not mention it here, but you cannot mention any column that is not you cannot mention any column in your select clause that is not mentioned in your group by clause. Okay, if you want to mention this, then you have to mention it within an aggregate function. So if I execute this, it throws an error. But if I want state to be displayed, then I can put an aggregate function on top of that. Then it will work. Now it will work. Okay, max of state is returning null, I think, because maybe the state column is having null values. Okay, I hope that is clear. Now the last variation, okay, maybe I think this you guys already suggested previously. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to explain, everything about group by clause. Now um, we'll proceed with solving some SQL queries for group by clause, but uh, I wanted to take some time to explain group by, because trust me, whether you are a fresher, you are an intermediate level, you are an advanced expert in SQL, group by is something you will use each and every day. It's like bread and butter of SQL every single day. Even in my work, I don't think so there would be any day where I have not used a group by clause. Okay, we almost use it every single day, and a lot of people get confused about this. Okay, so is it clear about group by clause? Any questions? Uh, you let me know if you have questions. But before I get into the questions, I want to explain about the having clause. Okay, last four. What is last four? I didn't get you, Adil Fita. Third third rule. Okay, select clause only has aggregate functions. Okay, so this third rule, when I say, right, so it's basically this one. So I'm doing a group by some columns, but in my select clause, it's not mandatory that I need to use all these columns. I can only use aggregate functions. As you can see, count of one is an aggregate function, and this will work. Okay, so I'm just telling you what columns you can have in group by and what columns you can have in select clause. It's not uh, ideally whenever whatever columns you're using in group by, in most cases we'll always have those columns in our select clause, but it is not mandatory. Okay, but in most of the cases whenever we are writing the query, whatever columns you have here, we will put it here. Otherwise, whatever data you get, it kind of not meaningful, right? You will not know what is 3, what is 1 and 1. Okay, but if I put these two columns here, then you will come to know, okay, for country and for this particular country and for this particular city there are 3 records, something like that, right? Okay, so I will explain about group by rules once again. I'll try to maybe before the end of the class I'll try to explain that once again. But before that, I also want to explain one more concept, okay, which comes hand in hand with group by. um, and that is, I want an example for that. So for example, I'll take this product line. Okay, so I'll just copy this and I'll put it here. And if I execute this, you can see that I'm getting, so I'm going to the products table, I'm grouping the data based on the product line, and I'm telling there are totally 37 classic cars, 3 trains, and etc. Okay, now let's say you had a requirement where you wanted to fetch the total number of um, total number of vehicles under each of the product line, but you only wanted to display those product lines who had more than 20 vehicles under them. Okay, so how can you do that? So let's say the query is fetch all product categories who have more than 20 vehicles under them. Okay, so something like this. How do you modify this query to return this? So when I say I need to find a product category, so this product line is basically a product category, and I want to only display those product categories who have more than 20 vehicles under them. Who have more than 20 vehicles here? So 37, definitely more than 20, right? So there are more than 20 classic cars, and then I can see there are more than 20 vintage cars. Okay, all the other product categories are less than 20, right? So Aram already gives an output here telling that where count greater than 20. So now my question is, if I put where count of, do I put count or count of one? Count of one greater than 20. Can you tell me if this query will work? Okay. So anyone here thinks this query will work? Okay. So everyone thinks this query will not work, right? Why will it not work? Why it will not work is, what is this where condition? Where is a filter condition you apply on the table? In this particular case, I have used the products table. So when I put count of one, SQL will go into the products table. It will see, is there any column by the name count of one? If there was any column by the value by the name count of one, then it would apply this filter. Okay, so in this case, count of one is not a column, right? Aggregate, so it's giving this particular error, right? So that is why this where will not work here, but rather what I can do is I have something called as a having clause, having count of 1 greater than 20. And now if I run this, now it will work, and it is going to return me only those 2 vehicle categories who are having more than 20 vehicles under them. Okay, now what exactly happened here? So why did where clause not work? Okay, where clause is basically applied on your entire result set, right? Whatever data is written from your query, for that result set where clause is applied, but your having clause is applied on your group. Okay, so whatever is data is returned from the group, over that having clause is applied. So for example, let's say I go here, okay, and let's say instead of 20, I only want to display which is having more than, okay, so more than 20 is like this, and I'm just going to copy this again. Let's say I'm going to write another query here. Fetch product categories who have less than 10 vehicles under them. So let's say not more, but less than 10 vehicles under them. Okay, under them, and I'll tell consider only and I'll tell do not consider um, trains. Okay, and I'll tell here less than 20 vehicles. Okay, so I have this particular question: fetch all the product categories who have less than 20 vehicles under them, and I'm also telling do not consider trains. Okay, so how do I do this? First of all, I need to find all the categories who have less than 20, right? So here I can put less than 20, and if I run this, I am getting all the vehicles who are having less than 20. So I have trains, planes, trucks, motorcycles, and ships. But also I have another condition telling that do not consider trains. What this means is I need to put a where condition here telling that where product line is not equal to trains. Okay. Now if I execute this, it will fetch me all the data without the trains. Okay. Now the reason why I'm showing you this is because you can see here I have a where condition and I have a having clause in the same query and it works fine. The reason is both this, even though it looks like they are filter condition, they are basically filtering your data based on certain conditions. They both perform their operation on two different levels. Okay, where will always happen in the beginning. That is, as soon as you fetch the data from your table, SQL is going to look for whatever you have mentioned in the where clause, and it's going to filter the data based on that. Once you have that filtered set of data, then the group by is going to happen. Okay, and once the group by has happened, after that finally the having clause will happen. Okay, so let's say out of this I only wanted to display the first two records. Okay, so let's say I will tell limit 2, and if I execute this, now you can see that it's only fetching me the first two records. Okay, now this is basically the order of execution in SQL. Okay, whenever you run an SQL query, you can say that first SQL is going to look for this one that is in your from clause. Okay, so this will basically be the I'll tell 1. Okay, and then once the data is fetched from your uh, once SQL comes to know which table it needs to look in order to fetch the data, it will then go what are the filter conditions, how many records should I fetch. Okay, so this will be 2. This is the second thing that will get executed. Okay, and then the third thing basically the select clause kind of, okay, it there are different scenarios where select clause can happen in the beginning and different scenarios where select clause can happen at a little later. But for now, let's say I'm going to call this 3. Okay, and then your group by is going to happen, and after group by your having clauses are going to happen, and finally the limit will happen. Okay, now there is one more thing that we can do here, and that is order by. So order by, let's say 1. Okay, and this will be 6 and this will be 7. Okay, so this is how the order of which uh, SQL clause gets executed in which order. This is what it is. Okay, first your table, whichever table is used, that will get executed, and if you are using multiple tables, then all that will get executed first. Okay, and then comes your filter condition, that is your where condition. Then comes your whatever column needs to be fetched, SQL will identify that. Then comes your group by clause. Okay, once the group by has been done, then on that group by, if any filter has to be applied, then we use this having clause, and after this having is done, only then we can use the order by clause to sort the data, and finally limit will come at the extreme end. Okay, so this is the sequence. Now what exactly is the difference between having and where? Okay, so let's try to look at that more clearly. So I'm just going to copy it here. I'm going to remove all of this. Okay, so let's say I will not include this count for now. Okay, and if I just do a select from products table, you can see I'm getting 109 records. Now if I put a filter condition here, you can see that I'm getting 106 records. So previously there was 109 and now there are 106. How? Because this where condition will get applied as soon as the table is fetched, right? And then there is a group by clause. So now when I run the group by clause, what it's going to do is it's going to create a group for every distinct value in this particular column. Okay, and from here then I need to apply the count of 1. Okay, so then when I apply the count of 1, uh, Okay, because I need to have it here. Okay, so oh, sorry. I need to have this syntax here. Count of one having greater than three, or let's say I'll put having greater than five. Okay, so now if I execute this, previously we got seven, right? So when I did a so when I did this, I got only six records. Okay, because train is already excluded. So let's say instead of greater than 5, I'll put greater than 20. Okay. So previously we had six, and now when I put this, it's switching me to. Okay. So the simplest of difference between where clause and having clause is where clause will apply filter on the entire table data, or if you are using multiple table, the entire result set. And then group by, this having clause will apply filter based on the result that is returned from your group by. So we cannot use this having clause without a group by. So we always use having when we are using a group by. Okay, but we can use where condition even without a group by. Okay, so there is a difference between where clause and having clause. Is it clear? Or okay, so I'm going to end the class now. I'm going to answer some questions that you might have. But did it was it little too much? All these concepts, group by and having clause. Did I confuse you guys by talking about all the different scenarios in the same class, or is it fine? Because it's a very important concept, group by. Multiple conditions, we can put multiple conditions as well, and we will see that with some query examples. Okay, merge was covered in the session 4. Uh, okay, so let me look at some questions that you might have. Okay, I'm not going to be covering anything else. If you want to drop off, you can drop off. But if you want to wait for the questions to get answered, then you can wait. Okay, so let's look at the questions. What's incorrect in this? How to change default date format? Okay, this how to change default date format. Um In Oracle, we can change the NLS parameter, but in PostgreSQL, I'm not sure. Okay, I don't think so. You really need to do that, but maybe I will Google it, and you can also Google it, and we'll try to see. Okay, I think you can also change the default format from the tool itself. I think if you go to preference, and probably there should be somewhere where you can change the default settings. Okay, but I'm not sure about that. But we can look into that later. Select from order inner join product where okay. Total quantity sold. Do we use count function instead of sum function? Total quantity sold. Okay, so for total quantity sold is what? So total number of. So if it is total number of items sold, then I think it is count. Total quantity sold, I think maybe it is sum. The sum and count depends on how the question is framed. Okay, where to find PK and PK. Okay, so Carlos, I already responded to this particular question. Query to find PK and primary key and foreign key on all tables. Did you not see my response to you in Telegram? Because if you go to my Telegram, right? So 1 minute, let me try to show it. Where did I put it? Okay, just a minute. Because I found that tables for all the four RDBMS and I shared it in Telegram. It was okay, this one. So if I okay, I'll open a new window. So these are all the tables. Okay, if you want to find all the constraints in Microsoft SQL Server, you can use this query. Basically, it is from the table constraints table in this particular schema. In Oracle, we can use the user constraint columns table, and then in PostgreSQL, we can use this. So what table do we have? What table we have now? Customers. If I run this. If I run this. Uh, from clause entry C. Okay, C. So here you can see in my customers table, It's telling P. P stands for primary key. So this is how you can find if this table is having multiple constraints, then you would have multiple records here. So this one I have already shared in Telegram group. I'll also try to share it today in the attachment. Okay. Now before that, before I take any other question, I want to save whatever I have done here so that I don't lose this. So let me save this once. Okay. Today is session 7. Okay, this was group by, and before that we covered these questions, right? Okay. So the answer to all the assignment queries, right? I will share it in the notes file today. Okay, just an update. Okay, so let's proceed. In the sales order database, why we are inserting data scrolling is an issue. That was what as sales order while we were inserting data scrolling is an issue. Scrolling is an issue. I don't know, Akhil, what you mean. What do you mean by scrolling is an issue when inserting data? I don't know if your tool is getting hanged. I am not really sure about that. I think when you give us new assignment, please give us a number of rows the query should return, or if it's a single row, single column output, answer at the end of the questions. Okay, so I understand, Bhavesh. Along with the question, you also want to know what is the expected output, right? So you can verify. Um, okay, but for that, maybe from the next session, if I am giving, I'll try to do that. I will be doing that for some of the interview questions that I have. Okay, because some of the interview questions I will be giving it to you, which I have taken from Stata Scratch, Lead Code, etc. So for those I will share with you the output. But since yeah, but I'll try to remember that next time. How to use a default schema while working with PostgreSQL PG admin? I have 4 schemas. So your default schema is public, so try to connect to your public schema, and then if you are connected to a particular schema, and then if you do some queries without mentioning the schema name, then it will always refer to the schema to which you are connected. Okay, if you want to connect to a different schema, then you always mention the schema name dot the table name. No class. Okay, there is no class tomorrow. Okay, the next class will be on Thursday for Indians and Malaysians, and Wednesday for people in US or Canada. Okay, hope we are going to cover grouping set. I'm not going to be covering grouping set. If if you really need it, maybe I can look into that later. But I don't think so. You really need it at this moment. Where cannot contain aggregate function? Where cannot? Um, Actually, okay. So there can be certain. I don't know. Maybe let me look into that later. Okay, where cannot contain aggregate function? So let me take a note of this. I'll show you with some example. Okay, certain things. Okay, so select sum of salary. What comes after having the fig in order of execution? So I already explained it here. Order of execution. What comes after having? So after having, you get order by and the limit clause. Limit is the last. Um, Select sum of salary from employee having sum of salary greater. Here we are using having without group by. Will it work? It will not work. So this query from Supriya, right? This query should not work. It should throw an error because you're trying to filter based on having. No, I think this should not work. So let's try to, because you're putting having before group by. I think having should come after group by. So let's take this query from Supriya and let's try to execute this. Okay, so this is the employee table. Do we have employee table here? I think this employee table does not exist. So this employee table is in our previous database, right? Banking. Okay, so let me connect to banking and put, where did it go? Okay, so let me copy this. Did you use a group by here? Okay, you did not use a group by, it does not work. Employees. Having clause. Okay, so this having is working. This one, to be frank, right? We have never used this kind of query, but I was not sure about this. So I think this having is working here because you're not even using any group by, and it is working. So let's do one thing. So if I use a group by here, group by, what column does this table have? Employee ID. Syntax error near employee. So, but let's say if I put down, it works. Okay, so what this means is, so let's copy this entire thing. Okay, so Supriya, good one, huh? Good that you brought this. To be frank, I was not aware of this. Okay, uh, so what Supriya has done is she has a query here, and she's not doing any grouping, and she's basically just she's not even using a where clause, but she's using a having clause. Okay, and this works fine. And the reason why this works fine is because she's using an aggregate function. Okay, but let's say instead of this, if I had to do a filter based on a particular column and not on an aggregated value, then I think this will fail. Okay, but this is where you can use where. Okay, okay, so different variations in SQL. To be frank, uh, I have never written a query in my entire query in my entire career where I have used a having clause without a group by. Okay, but I'm sure other people might have come across that. So this is something that I think uh, we can also learn, and that is if we have a requirement where we need to filter the data based on some aggregated value, then we can use having clause. Okay, but I think until and unless we are not grouping the data. If you are grouping the data also we can use, but then the group by clause will maybe change the result set. Okay, so here we can use, but the result set will change. You can see because it applied this filter for each group. Okay, but here it applied this filter for the entire result set. Okay, so this is a good point, and I hope everyone is clear on this. So if you want to do a filter on your table with aggregate function based on certain aggregated results, then we can use it using the having clause. But if you want to filter the data for a column value, then we use the where clause. Okay, of course we can use having clause, where clause, and group by all together, but then the result set or the aggregation will be applied for each group. Okay, so if you want to apply the filter for the entire table set and you want to enter the filter based on a certain aggregated function, then we can use a having clause here. Okay, very good point actually. So let me save this. Okay, so I'm just going to add it to the notes. So there is always something new that we can learn in a programming language. And I think this is something pretty simple, but since I have never come across this in my work, or maybe I have come across long back, but I don't remember. Yeah. But I hope this is clear. So let's move on. Any assignment for today's class? I have some assignments, but I don't want to give it now because I have not solved any queries with group by. So I want to solve at least 4 or 5 group by SQL queries first before I give assignments on group by. And then I am also coming up with some interview basic SQL queries, which I will try to share in the next class. Okay, maybe 10 interview queries, which I'll be taking from some platforms, and I'll share it with you. Hopefully, by next class, I will give it to you. Okay, we may change the group by rules notes that we have written in the class. Whatever we covered in the group by, as it's not mandatory to cover the columns. Yeah, I have already mentioned that in one of the points. Digital Tech Connect, where clause and having similarity, as I already explained, right? And I think this is a very good example also here. So having clause, generally we use having clause with a group by clause. Okay, but having clause, we generally you can filter the data for an aggregated value. So when I say aggregated value, it's a value that is returned from an aggregate function, in this case sum. Whereas a where condition we can use to filter the data based on the values that is present in any column. Okay, in simplest of term that. Select clause can have subset of column list mentioned in group by. Am I right? Select clause can have subset of column. Yes, you are right, Nandini. Can you upload assignments in? Yes, I will do that. It's very hard to find among those any files. Can you upload assignments in Lighthall? The thing is, Krishna, I always share all the assignments in Lighthall. I keep getting this same question in the Telegram group. I don't know if you people who say that they don't find assignment in Lighthall, have you even checked? Because everything that is present in Telegram, I always share it in Lighthall. So you will find all the assignments and everything in Lighthall always. Okay. So Lighthall is actually the main platform. Telegram is just an optional platform. Okay. If you're not present in Telegram, it's absolutely fine, no problem. Shouldn't group by be before select in the order of execution? Uh, okay, so there are certain cases I think that can interchange, but generally, right? Whenever generally yes, we need to do a group by data first, and the select clause generally happens at the end. Okay. But depending on certain cases in the select clause, we might have certain functions and certain calculations that might need to be done first. Okay. So yeah, that I think in certain cases it can change him. For Akhil's question, you can select all from the page and run it. For Akhil's question, you can select all from the page and not sure about that. Please explain operator which we used in round function. Okay, so I think I have not covered this, Anbarasan. I will cover this in the next class, okay? That double column, what it means. The select the group and deselect. I don't understand what this is. Select sum of salary from employees having sum of salary. This is wrong. Sum of salary from employees having sum of salary. So bio, as we just saw, right? It is not wrong. It still works as we just saw here. Okay, what is this? The where clause filters the record in the table before grouping. The having clause filters the record grouping. Okay. What happens if you use column in the column list in the group by select max of city from table name group by count if that column has aggregate function in the. What happens if you use columns in the column list by select? I don't understand what you mean, Abdi Sita. Please, I need you to correct this. Select bio. This is not wrong, as I already said. What happens if you use column in the column list in group by select? Yeah, I don't understand what you mean by this. Can you elaborate, Abdul Fita? I do not understand this question. What's the use of order by? It's different from ascending order, descending order. Order by is just a sorting of data. Um, it is just sorting of data in ascending means from low to high, and descending means the vice versa of that. So I've explained this in one of the previous classes. You can check that. Does not mean it is right. Okay, so bio is telling again and get again on it is wrong. So let's discuss on this bio. So you're telling that this query is wrong, right? Which query is it? This same query, right? This is wrong. Okay. Why do you think it is wrong, bio? It is, and you're telling because it runs does not mean it is right. Why do you think it is wrong? Is there anyone else who thinks that this is wrong? Bio is telling very wrong. Okay. So you don't understand the difference. You can see, you can use group by and the output will be different, as I already showed you here. If I use a group by, I'm getting multiple records. Okay. But this query is completely different from this query. These are two different things. And in no way this is wrong. This is absolutely correct. The only thing is, here what is happening is different from what is happening in the group by. For example, what is actually happening here is, so let's say you have a requirement where uh, so what's actually happening with this is, so it's telling okay, so the total, so let's say I don't know how many employees are there in this table. Let's say there are 10 employees, and the sum of the salary of all these 10 employees is coming to 65 6 what 650,000 record, 650,000, right? But what here the filter condition that is added is you fetch the data. This query should only fetch the data if the total sum of salary of all the employees is greater than 5,000. Okay, and since it is already greater than 5,000, it is fetching the record. Okay, but let's say instead of 5,000 I put 900,000. Okay, and now if I run this, it's not going to return any record. So this query is not wrong. It's, I don't know what scenario you would have to write a query like that. As I told you, in my career I've not come across a case where I had to only use a having clause. Okay, we always use having clause or with the group by clause. I have not come across this kind of scenarios, but I have not worked in every single project, right? Different people would have different projects, different requirements, and I don't know, they might have a requirement where they might have to write a query where they need to do an aggregation of a certain value and they want to display that aggregation, but they want to display that aggregation only if it is greater than a certain value. Okay, in that case you might have to write this query, and this is absolutely fine. But you might have another requirement where, let's say, okay, for this I'm just going to write uh, uh, display the total salary given to all employees. Okay, display it only if it is greater than 5,000. Okay, some requirement. Okay, I'm just telling, if this is your requirement, then you put this query here and this query will return you the output. Okay, but let's say you have a requirement where telling that fetch the total salary. uh, I'm doing a group by employee. Employee ID is a primary key. Instead of employee ID, maybe I'll use some other column to make it more meaningful. Maybe branch. Okay, so I'll say branch code. Okay, so first the total salary given in salary earned in each branch. Okay, so display only if total salary is greater than 5,000. Okay, so let's say you have a requirement something like this: fetch the total salary earned in each branch. Okay, and display only if the total salary is greater than 5,000. So here they're telling for each branch display the total salary. In that case, this is a query that will work because for each branch, so I think for branch 1 it is 554,000, and for branch 2 it is 96,000. Okay, and in this case it is displaying. So this query is also right. This query is also right. The only difference is both these queries are written for two different purposes. They are not the same. Okay, so it is not wrong. I don't know why you say it is wrong. Where can it be used? They're not the same. I'm telling, they're not the same. They're two different things, but both of them are correct. Both of them are for their own purpose. Where can be used only to apply conditions and columns in a yes. So using a where, I think aggregate, you cannot filter based on aggregate function. If you want to filter the data based on aggregation of a certain value, then you can use having clause. Okay, so I think that's all for today. Bio, did you understand? Or any other confusions or any other questions? If nothing else, then we can end the class. Okay, today we have stretched the class extremely too long. Okay, so no class for tomorrow. The next class will be day after tomorrow. Okay. Uh, okay, for the question, can we use? You can use regex for question 4, but it is not recommended because it's a very simple search. It's better to use like, but you can use it, no problem. If you really want to use it, you can use it. But as I told you, right, when you can simply eat your food with your hand like this, you want to twist your hand and eat it like this, then that's what you would do if you're using regex. We use regex only when we have to match a pattern. Okay. These new questions, or did I miss these questions? In the sense, or there is lot of data. How do we? I think the same questions are getting repeated here. Is it? Oh, this is a question from 749. So I see I have some questions from 914 and 913, and then I'm getting some questions from the previous time. Okay, I think this is all the repeated questions. Okay, so I'm going to end the class now. That's all, guys. I hope you learned something about group by today. I don't expect you to become master of group by and having class just with one class. You need to solve SQL queries. I have a list of lot of SQL queries that we'll be solving in the next class. Okay, so that's all, everyone, and see you in the next class. Okay, bye.